There's been a lot of talk this week about the rift within the Republican Party that the shutdown has exposed. The New York Times this morning calling it a civil war. And John Karl is back with us. John, you explored that civil war with two Republicans this week.
That's right, Martha. I talked to two high-profile Republicans. Both are potential presidential candidates. Both are, no doubt about it, conservatives. But as you'll see, they represent opposite sides of this battle for the future of the Republican Party.
The deal was a terrible deal. The Washington establishment sold the American people down the river. It provided no relief for the millions of people who are hurting because of Obamacare. But it is worth also focusing on what did happen, because a lot, I think, was accomplished in the last couple of months. Number one, the public debate over the harms that Obamacare is inflicting. It elevated the public debate, and that is critically important.
People hated this shutdown. They hated this impasse. And this was seen as the Ted Cruz shutdown. You, more than any single individual, were seen as the one that triggered this crisis to begin with.
John, I agree that a lot of D.C. politicians tried to call it that, and a lot of the media did too. But
talk about public opinion nationally.
Let me be very clear. I said throughout this, we shouldn't have a shutdown. I don't want a shutdown. I repeatedly voted to open the government.
There never would have been a shutdown if you hadn't gone with this strategy of saying we're not even going to fund the government for 6 weeks unless we can defund Obamacare.
You know what, John? There never would have been a shutdown if Harry Reid and President Obama hadn't said we will not compromise, we will not negotiate, shut the government down.
How much do your colleagues just despise you right now on the floor? I mean, I hear some really strong language from your own fellow Republican senators.
I think it's obvious that we are now seeing the end of this agonizing odyssey. It's one of the more shameful chapters that I have seen.
Listen,
you made some enemies in this battle.
There's an old saying that politics, it ain't beanbag. And I'm not serving in office because I desperately needed 99 new friends in the U.S. Senate. Given the choice between being reviled in Washington, D.C. and appreciated in Texas, or reviled in Texas and appreciated in Washington, I would take the former 100 out of 100 times.
You did a radio interview where you compared Senate Republicans to an Air Force going over and bombing their own troops, bombing conservatives, bombing House conservatives.
And when you've got half the Senate Republican caucus firing their cannons at the House Republicans, it sabotages the effort. The reason this deal, the lousy deal, was reached is because, unfortunately, Senate Republicans made the choice not to support House Republicans.
But you're saying more than that, though. You're saying that not only did they not support House conservatives, that they attacked House conservatives, House Republicans.
Well, and I think that was unfortunate. I think it was unfortunate that you saw multiple members of the Senate Republicans going on television, attacking House conservatives, attacking the efforts to defund Obamacare, saying it cannot win, it's a fool's errand, we will lose, this must fail. That is a recipe for losing the fight, and it's a shame. We didn't win this battle, but I am encouraged that we have demonstrated when the American people stand up, the House of Representatives will listen, and I hope in time the Senate will listen also.
What next? We have another deadline. Government funding runs out on January 15th. Will you rule out pushing to the brink of another shutdown by saying you would block funding for the government unless Obamacare is defunded? Will you do that again?
I would do anything, and I will continue to do anything I can to stop the train wreck that is Obamacare. What I intend to do is continue standing with the American people to work to stop Obamacare, because it isn't working, it's costing people's jobs, and it's taking away their health care.
But Cruz continues to be under fire from members of his own party, including former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who told us the tactics that Cruz championed caused Republicans to lose ground.
So I want to ask you, this shutdown is over, we're back from the brink, no default. Was there anything gained in all of this?
No, I think there was some ground loss from the political point of view.
And this started with Republicans, mostly in the House, saying that they wanted to gut Obamacare, and they were willing to, not fund the government until that happened. I mean, they changed their position a little bit as it went along. But, I mean, how badly are Republicans hurt by all of this? This started with their strategy.
Tactically, it was a mistake to focus on something that couldn't be achieved. And that's what that was. It was tactics. In fact, I would argue that allowing Obamacare to be implemented, two things would happen. One, it would be so dysfunctional if it was implemented faithfully, that it would be clear for more people, or it couldn't be implemented because the government's not capable of doing it. It looks like that the latter rather than the former may be happening, but that was all crowded out by a miscalculation using something that shouldn't be used, the debt ceiling limit and continuation, of the budget.
What do you think when you see these guys, your own party, coming out and saying, debt ceiling? You don't necessarily need to raise that. I mean,
well, you have to pay your obligations. I do a lot of traveling overseas, and when we have these spikes of political conversations that are not grounded in reality, the rest of the world looks at us as untrustworthy. Yeah. That has implications not just for us, slowdown of economic activity. It has implications in the world because people have to count on the United States, and if we're behaving this way, it makes it harder to do so. So now, look, I'm not. I want to make sure everybody understands. I'm not blaming Republicans. I think we have a systemic problem in Washington right now, and the void of leadership is making it harder to get to a better place. The better place would be that, with civility, have a dialogue about the bigger, more pressing issues and try to find common ground, rather than use each instance of a possible crisis to win a political point. We need to start solving problems, and I think the president does not deserve credit in this either.
But I just spoke to Ted Cruz, and he was the guy who said, hey, let's not agree to a funding resolution unless Obamacare is defunded. That was the strategy that really kicked it off.
Yep.
And he told me that he will now do anything he can to stop Obamacare, and he does not rule out pushing to the brink once again. What would your message be to Ted Cruz?
Well, frankly, I think the best way to repeal Obamacare is to have an alternative. We never hear the alternative. We could do this in a much lower cost with improved quality based on our principles, free market principles. And two, show how Obamacare, flawed to its core, doesn't work. So have a little bit of self-restraint. It might actually be a better approach to see the massive dysfunction. But we don't even hear about that because we've stepped on that message. And I think Republicans need to just take a step back and show a little self-restraint and let this happen a little more organically.